Hello and welcome to Gladys Cake Kitchen. Today I am going to be finishing this fondant covered cake, which is completed with edible gold lace and some simple roses. This cake was partly done on a live demonstration along with a chocolate cake I made for my son, both of which are linked in the description box below. The cake stood here though was partly crumb coated but was left to chill first as it was shifting during the live demonstration and has now been brought back to be trimmed on top. The crumb coat though looks incomplete here, I know, because it was not just applied to seal in the crumbs as expected, but it was also to hold the layers together as they were shifting. A layer of ganache is applied starting from the top, which is spread around until the entire cake is completely covered. For some useful tips on getting the best out of using ganache, I whip my ganache first and I dip my tools such as a scraper and spatula in warm water to aid easy spread and a polished look. After spreading the ganache around the cake though, any excess is scraped off and the cake is left to set in the fridge for up to 15 to 20 minutes. After chilling though, the cake is returned for the top to be trimmed with a sharp knife before more layers of ganache is applied. I am aiming for a polished ganache cake, which will then be completed as a fully covered fondant cake. Another layer of ganache is applied, filling in any holes on the surface of the cake and on the top sides. Any excess is scraped clean and the cake is left to chill. A warm knife is again employed to trim the top lip of any excess ganache and a clean scraper follows for a polished look. A quick tip to getting sharp edges on a cake easily is to leave the excess ganache or buttercream hanging on the lip on the top of the cake, which is then trimmed later after chilling as shown here. When the ganache covering is done, the cake is left to chill whilst I prep the fondant for covering the cake. Back on my work table, I have some Massaticino fondant that I have kneaded and wrapped up to prevent it from drying. This is then rolled up with a rolling pin whilst occasionally dusting my work surface lightly with cornstarch to avoid sticking. There's no exact rules on how thin fondant can be rolled up, but a general rule of thumb is to roll it thin enough for a light covering, which means the cake will not be overwhelmed. Massaticino though is so far one of the best quality premium fondants on the market that rolls out thin enough to cover a cake without tears. After the fondant is rolled out, it is draped over the cake, which is covered with a layer of Trex to serve as glue to stick the fondant to the ganache cake. Notice the cake stands at 8.5 inches tall, notably a double barrel cake, and I'm covering the cake, draping the fondant first, then pulling out the bottom sides to form a skirt before dabbing the sides around to stick the fondant to the cake. Thanks to the quality of the fondant, I am able to achieve a clean covering without tears or elephant skin. I must confess I gave up on fondant celebration cakes a long time ago, except maintaining it for wedding cakes, and that's simply because fondant, whilst it adds a layer of task and cost to the making of a cake, it equally provides a broader medium for covering cakes compared to buttercream or ganache cakes. After covering the cake though, a fondant smoother is used to polish the cake off lightly and any excess fondant cut off. The surface of the cake is dusted lightly and air bubbles popped with a small pin. Next, the base of the cake is trimmed again for a cleaner look and more polishing is completed using a fondant smoother. A fluffy brush follows, which is used to dust off any excess cornstarch. A ball of fondant is then employed to finish smoothing out the cake surface for a polished look. This goes on for a while, but again, there are no rules on how long a cake can be polished for a polished and clean look, except the difference between a polished cake and a less polished cake is more polishing. Smoothing and polishing done, the cake is transferred onto a fondant covered board and it's time to add some decoration. First is cake lace, and I have a video linked up here showing you how to make edible gold cake lace using this pre-mix mixture from Claire Bowman. To apply the lace, the steam from a steamer set on the side is used to soften the lace whilst creating moisture on the fondant covering to stick the lace. When the first layer of lace is done, the other is added and any leftover is cut out using a pair of sharp scissors. More lace is applied to the top as done with the earlier lace below. Admittedly, this wasn't exactly the cake I had in mind, but I was pleased with how it turned out. Our lace is done and it's time to add some flowers. I have several beginner-friendly videos on how to attach flowers to a cake, but this was slightly different. I made the flowers into a bouquet and inserted the wrapped stalk into a straw to serve as a barrier, preventing direct contact with the cake. With a hole already made in the middle using a straw, the bouquet of flowers is inserted atop and on the side, with the flowers shift into place to match the aesthetics. In the end, the simplicity of a cake covered in fondant and adorned with edible lace and flowers is the look I settled for. This is a beautiful finish to a cake that began with some difficulties in a live demonstration. The live tutorial that saw me fill and partly crumb coat this cake is on screen for you to watch, and the completed cake for my son, which is also featured in the demonstration, is next on screen for you. I'll see you in my next video. Thanks for watching.